He's already dead. We're just keeping the body warm." Those words would echo through Mount Sinai Hospital long after Dr. Richard Hoffman spoke them. Enzo Caputo lay motionless in room 607, his chest rising and falling only because machines forced air into his lungs. "Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel." The neurologist stood at the foot of the bed, addressing the assembled family members with the clinical detachment of a man who'd pronounced death 1,000 times before. "Zero brain activity for 96 consecutive hours," Dr. Hoffman continued, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. His voice carried the practiced steadiness of someone delivering terrible news to dangerous people. "His cerebral cortex is dead. He can't think, feel, or respond. The man you knew doesn't exist anymore." Tommy Caputo, Enzo's nephew and enforcer, slammed his fist against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. His hand drifted toward his waistband, where everyone in the room knew he kept a gun. The movement was subtle, practiced, the kind of gesture that had ended arguments in back alleys and waterfront warehouses across Brooklyn. "You're giving up on him?" Tommy's voice was ice wrapped in silk, the tone he used right before someone disappeared. "Just like that. I'm telling you the medical reality, Mr. Caputo." Dr. Hoffman's throat bobbed nervously. Despite his Yale degree and 30 years of experience, he suddenly looked very small in his white coat. "Your uncle suffered catastrophic neurological damage. The machines are breathing for him. His heart is beating because we're forcing it to beat. But Enzo Caputo, the person, the consciousness, everything that made him who he was, is gone." He paused, gathering courage for the final pronouncement. "I'm recommending we discontinue life support within 72 hours." The words hung in the sterile air like a death sentence. December wind rattled the windows of the 6th-floor ICU. Outside, New York City sparkled with Christmas lights, oblivious to the war about to erupt in its streets. Vincent Russo, Enzo's cousin and the family's consigliere, stepped forward from the shadows. Unlike Tommy's rage, Vincent's face showed perfect grief. But his eyes, if anyone had been watching closely, gleamed with something else entirely. Calculation. Relief. Opportunity. "We understand, Doctor," Vincent said smoothly, placing a hand on Tommy's shoulder in a gesture that looked supportive but was actually restraining. "This is difficult news. We'll need time to discuss this as a family." "Of course. Take the time you need." Dr. Hoffman practically fled the room, his white coat flapping behind him like surrender flags. The moment the door closed, the performance ended. "If he dies, we split the territories," Vincent said quietly, his grief evaporating like morning mist. "The Russos take Brooklyn Heights and Red Hook. The Caputos keep Bay Ridge and Bensonhurst." "If he dies," Tommy's voice was sharp. "Or if we help him along." Vincent's smile was thin as a razor blade. "The doctors just told us he's already dead, nephew. We'd simply be accepting medical reality." In the hallway outside room 607, FBI Special Agent Robert Morrison lowered his newspaper, listening. For 6 months, His team had been building a RICO case against Enzo Caputo. They had wiretaps, testimony from informants, financial records tracing back to offshore accounts. They'd been weeks away from indictments. And then someone had tried to kill the man they'd spent years investigating. The ambush had happened on October 15th, outside Enzo's restaurant in Carroll Gardens. 3 gunmen, AK-47s, a stolen van. Enzo had taken 2 rounds to the chest and 1 that grazed his skull. His driver died instantly. His bodyguard bled out on the sidewalk. But Enzo Caputo, Brooklyn's most feared crime lord, the man who'd built an empire on fear and loyalty, had survived. Barely. The gunshot wounds should have killed him. When they didn't, the coma should have. And when that failed, the mysterious deterioration began. His brain activity dropping week by week, his organs slowly shutting down despite the lack of new injuries. Morrison knew poisoning when he saw it. The question was, who? His money was on Vincent Russo, the cousin who stood to inherit everything, the man who'd been making quiet overtures to rival families for months. The one whose bank accounts showed deposits that didn't match his legitimate income. But Morrison needed proof. And more than that, he needed Enzo Caputo alive to testify. Fat chance of that now. 3 floors below, in the hospital's basement supply room, Anna Moore's world was collapsing. Her phone buzzed with the text message that would change everything. Anna, I'm so sorry. Family emergency. Can't watch Nancy tomorrow night. Hope you can find someone else. Anna read it 3 times, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something manageable. They didn't. No babysitter. Daycare closed for Christmas break. No family. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, and her husband Marcus had been gone for 3 years, killed in a construction accident that left her with a 5-year-old daughter and medical bills that still haunted her credit score. No friends with flexibility. Everyone she knew worked multiple jobs just like her, scraping by in a city that devoured the poor and spit out their bones. No options. Anna stared at the crumpled eviction notice in her pocket. $2,400 in back rent, due by December 26th, or she and Nancy would spend Christmas on the street. She'd been working 70-hour weeks, splitting her time between the hospital's day shift and evening office cleaning downtown. She was close, so close to having enough. But she needed 3 more overnight shifts. The ICU overnights paid double because nobody wanted to work the floor where mobsters kept watch over their dying boss, where FBI agents lurked in the hallways, where violence felt like it might erupt at any moment. Anna had been avoiding that floor for weeks. Now she had no choice. Ms. Patterson. Anna knocked on her supervisor's office door. I need to talk to you about picking up shifts. Gloria Patterson looked up from her paperwork, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She was a heavy-set black woman in her 50s who'd worked at Mount Sinai for 23 years and had seen everything the hospital could throw at her. She took one look at Anna's face and sighed. You're about to ask for the ICU overnights, aren't you? I need the money. Anna, that's the VIP floor. You know what that means. The Caputo floor. Ms. Patterson removed her glasses. It's dangerous up there. Those people. I'll be invisible. I'm always invisible. It was true, and they both knew it. Anna Moore had perfected the art of being unseen. In her gray janitor's uniform, with her cleaning cart and her downcast eyes, she moved through the hospital like a ghost. Doctors looked through her. Nurses barely acknowledged her. Patients forgot her face the moment she left their rooms. To everyone who mattered, Anna Moore didn't exist. Ms. Patterson studied her for a long moment. What happened? Babysitter canceled. I've got nowhere for Nancy tomorrow night. Anna. I know. I'll figure it out. But I need those shifts. Another sigh. Fine. But you listen to me carefully. Ms. Patterson leaned forward. Room 607 is the VIP suite. That's where Enzo Caputo is. You clean that room last, after midnight when family visits end. You don't make conversation. You don't make eye contact. You don't hear anything, you don't see anything, you don't remember anything. Understand? Yes, ma'am. And Anna. Ms. Patterson's voice softened. Be careful up there. Those men, they're not like regular people. They don't see the world the way we do. Anna nodded and left, her mind already racing through impossible calculations. If she brought Nancy to the hospital, if she could hide her somewhere safe, if she could just survive 3 nights without anyone noticing. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was potentially illegal. But it was also the only way to keep a roof over her daughter's head. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness of their studio apartment. $1, $800 a month for 400 square feet in a building where the heat barely worked and the elevator had been broken for 2 years, and listened to Nancy breathing in the bed they shared. 5 years old. Bright, curious, innocent. Nancy still believed the world was good, that people were kind, that miracles happened. She drew pictures of rainbows and unicorns. She asked questions about everything. She told Anna every night before bed, "I love you to the moon and back, Mommy." Anna would do anything to protect that innocence. Anything to give Nancy the childhood she deserved. Even if it meant taking impossible risks. The next morning, Anna packed a large tote bag with unusual supplies. Nancy's favorite snacks, juice boxes, crayons and coloring books, her stuffed rabbit Mr. Hop, and a small blanket. She dressed Nancy in warm clothes, layers, because the hospital's supply closets were always cold, and explained the plan in the simplest terms possible. Mommy has to work tonight, baby. And you're going to be very brave and wait for me in a special hiding spot. Like hide and seek. Exactly like hide and seek. But this is a quiet game. A secret game. Can you do that? Nancy nodded solemnly, her brown eyes wide and trusting. I can be quiet, Mommy. I promise. Anna's heart cracked a little. I know you can, sweetheart. December 22nd, 9:47 p.m. Anna's hand shook as she swiped her ID badge and entered Mount Sinai's employee entrance. The tote bag on her shoulder felt heavier than it should, weighted with guilt and desperation and the warm weight of a 5-year-old child who'd fallen asleep during the subway ride. The security guard barely glanced at her. Why would he? She was just the cleaning lady. Anna navigated the maze of service corridors and back staircases that the hospital's invisible workers used. She knew every shortcut, every blind spot in the security cameras, every forgotten corner of this massive building. The ICU supply closet was on the 6th floor, tucked behind a storage area for 4 poles and wheelchairs. Nobody used it much. Too far from the nurse's station, too cluttered with outdated equipment. Perfect. Anna gently extracted Nancy from the tote bag and settled her into the corner, surrounded by blankets and supplies. Remember, baby. Quiet as a mouse. I'll come check on you every 20 minutes, okay? Okay, Mommy. Nancy yawned, clutching Mr. Hop. Love you to the moon and back. To the moon and back, Anna whispered, kissing her forehead. Then she closed the door and went to work, her heart hammering against her ribs like a prisoner desperate to escape. 11:43 p.m. Room 607. Anna had saved Enzo Caputo's room for last, just like Ms. Patterson had instructed. The family had left 20 minutes ago. Tommy with his barely concealed rage, Vincent with his calculated grief, and a handful of soldiers whose names Anna didn't want to know. Now it was just her, the dying mob boss, and the quiet symphony of medical machines keeping a corpse alive. Anna moved efficiently, emptying trash bins, wiping down surfaces, mopping the floor. She'd learned to clean without really looking, to perform her job while keeping her eyes carefully unfocused. But even without looking directly, she noticed things. Enzo Caputo had the hands of a working man, calloused, scarred, strong even in unconsciousness. His face, peaceful in the dim light, didn't look like a monster's face. He looked tired, sad, almost ordinary, if you ignored the armed guards outside and the federal agents pretending to be visitors down the hall. Anna noticed the scars, a faded knife wound on his neck, a bullet scar on his left shoulder, smaller marks that spoke of a life lived violently. She also noticed something the doctors probably hadn't, a slight discoloration under his fingernails that didn't match trauma, a faint smell that didn't belong in a hospital room. Small things, wrong things, things that suggested Enzo Caputo's condition wasn't entirely natural. Anna filed the observation away and kept cleaning. Not her business. Not her world. She was just the invisible woman who emptied the trash. At 11:58 p.m., she finished and quietly left room 607, locking eyes with the FBI agent pretending to read a magazine across the hall. He looked through her, of course. Everyone always did. 2:47 a.m. Anna was in room 623, cleaning up after a patient who'd had a violent reaction to medication, when she realized she hadn't checked on Nancy in over an hour. Her heart stopped. She abandoned her cart and ran to the supply closet, her feet silent in their non-slip shoes. Please let her be asleep. Please let her be safe. Please. The closet was empty. Mr. Hop was gone. Nancy's blanket lay crumpled in the corner. The juice boxes and crackers remained untouched. But her daughter had disappeared. No, Anna whispered, panic flooding her veins like ice water. No, no, no. She burst into the hallway, looking both directions. The ICU at 3 a.m. was a twilight zone. Half the lights dimmed, most patients sleeping, only the night nurse at the far station and the soft beeping of 100 machines monitoring 100 fragile lives. Where would a 5-year-old go? Somewhere warm. Somewhere with light. Somewhere that felt safe. Anna moved quickly through the ICU, checking empty rooms, peering into patient wards, her terror mounting with each passing second. If security found Nancy, Anna would be fired. Arrested. She'd lose everything. But that wasn't what scared her most. What scared her was the thought of Nancy lost in a hospital full of criminals and federal agents, wandering into danger she couldn't possibly understand. Anna turned the corner toward the VIP wing and saw it. Room 607's door slightly ajar. The warm light spilling into the hallway. The silence that felt too complete. No. Please, God, no. Anna pushed the door open, her breath caught in her throat, prepared to see her daughter standing terrified beside the most dangerous man in Brooklyn. Instead, she saw Nancy curled up on Enzo Caputo's hospital bed, fast asleep. The little girl was nestled against the mob boss's chest, her head resting directly over his heart. Mr. Hop was tucked between them. Nancy's small arm draped across Enzo's torso, and her face, peaceful, innocent, trusting, was pressed against the man who'd ordered executions, orchestrated crimes, built an empire on violence and fear. The machines around Enzo beeped their steady rhythm, unchanged and uncaring. Anna stood frozen in the doorway, her mind screaming at her to grab Nancy and run, her body refusing to move, her heart breaking at the image of her daughter seeking warmth in the only place she could find it. A dying monster's hospital bed. Anna took one step forward, then another, her hands reaching for Nancy. The door behind her opened. Night nurse Karen Wilson entered for the 3 a.m. vitals check, saw Anna hovering over the VIP patient, saw the child on the bed, and opened her mouth to scream. "Please," Anna whispered desperately. "Please don't. She was scared. She was cold. I'll get her out of here right now, please." But Karen wasn't listening. Karen was staring at the monitors in shock. Anna followed her gaze. Enzo Caputo's heart rate had changed. Not dramatically, just a few beats per minute, but enough to register. His blood pressure had stabilized. The oxygen saturation that had been declining for days showed improvement. Small changes, barely noticeable. Except that brain-dead patients don't have changes. Their vitals don't improve. Their bodies don't respond. They just die. "Get the doctor," Karen whispered, her voice trembling. "Get Dr. Hoffman. Now." Anna scooped Nancy into her arms. Her daughter stirred but didn't wake, and backed toward the door as Karen hit the code button. Within seconds, the ICU exploded with activity. Doctors running. Nurses flooding the room. Someone shouting for lab work. The overhead PA system crackling to life. Anna clutched Nancy and ran, her daughter's sleepy voice murmuring against her neck. "Mommy? Is the sleeping man okay? He was so sad." "Sure, baby. Everything's okay. Everything's fine." But Anna's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her daughter. Because something impossible had just happened in room 607. Something the doctors would spend the next 4 hours trying to explain. Something that would change 3 lives forever. A dying mob boss, a desperate mother, and a 5-year-old girl who'd only been trying to stay warm. And somewhere in the darkness of his coma, in the space between death and life where Enzo Caputo had been trapped for 6 months, something stirred. A warmth, a heartbeat, a small voice saying, "Don't be scared, sleeping man. I'm here." And for the first time since October 15th, Enzo Caputo began the long journey back toward the light. 6:47 a.m. December 23rd. Dr. Richard Hoffman hadn't slept all night. He'd run every test twice, consulted with 3 specialists, reviewed 6 months of medical records looking for something, anything that would explain what he was seeing. There was no explanation. At 3:07 a.m., Enzo Caputo's brain activity had spiked. Regions that had been flatlined for weeks showed sudden electrical activity. His vitals had normalized. His autonomic responses had strengthened. And at 6:42 a.m., 5 minutes before Dr. Hoffman's final rounds, Enzo Caputo had opened his eyes. Not the vacant, unseeing stare of a vegetative state. Not the random muscle spasms of brain death. Actual, conscious, aware eye movement. Dr. Hoffman stood at the foot of room 607's bed, his coffee cold in his hands, watching Enzo Caputo's eyes track the morning nurse as she adjusted his 4. "This is medically impossible," he said for the 4th time that morning. Enzo's eyes shifted to him, met his gaze, held it. Dr. Hoffman's coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. In the hallway, Tommy Caputo was shouting into his phone, "I don't care what you were doing. Get to the hospital now. Uncle Enzo's awake." Vincent Russo stood in the corner, his face a mask of shock and poorly concealed horror, watching his carefully constructed plans collapse in real time. FBI agent Morrison was already on his 2nd cup of coffee, recalculating everything. And in the basement supply room where she'd hidden after the chaos, Anna Moore sat with Nancy sleeping in her lap, her employment badge on the floor beside her, knowing that her invisible life was about to become very, very visible. Because the impossible had happened. The dead man had awakened. And nothing, not for Enzo Caputo, not for Anna Moore, not for anyone caught in the orbit of this miracle, would ever be the same again. Anna arrived for her first ICU overnight shift at 10 p.m. on December 20th, 2 days before everything changed. The 6th floor felt different from the rest of Mount Sinai Hospital. The air was thicker here, charged with tension that had nothing to do with medical emergencies. Armed men in suits that cost more than Anna made in 6 months lined the hallways, their eyes constantly scanning, hands never far from their waistbands. They stood in pairs outside room 607, speaking in low voices, radiating the kind of casual menace that made ordinary people cross the street. Anna pushed her cleaning cart past them, her head down, her shoulders curved inward in the posture of someone who'd learned to make herself small. She was good at this, the invisible woman routine. In her shapeless gray uniform with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, she was furniture. Background noise. Nothing worth noticing. One of the guards, a thick-necked man with a Brooklyn accent and a Rolex that caught the fluorescent light, was talking on his phone. He didn't lower his voice as Anna approached. "Nah, Tommy says we wait. See if the old man pulls through." A pause. "And if he doesn't?" Then we discuss succession. Anna's cart wheels squeaked as she passed. The guard didn't even glance at her. She'd been invisible her whole life. As a child in foster care, invisibility meant survival. Don't cause problems, don't ask for things, don't make the adults remember you exist. As a young widow struggling to raise a daughter alone, invisibility meant keeping her head down and her mouth shut while the world trampled over her. But invisibility also meant she saw things, heard things, understood things that powerful people assumed she couldn't. Anna reached the nurse's station, where head nurse Patricia Reeves was reviewing charts. Patricia was a no-nonsense woman in her early 50s with steel-gray hair and the exhausted eyes of someone who'd spent 30 years navigating hospital politics. More. Patricia barely looked up. "You're the new overnight for this floor?" "Yes, ma'am." Patricia set down her pen and studied Anna for a long moment. "You understand what floor this is?" "Yes, ma'am." "Room 607 is our VIP patient. Enzo Caputo." Patricia's voice dropped. "You've heard of him?" Anna nodded. Everyone in Brooklyn had heard of Enzo Caputo. The name was whispered in bodegas and shouted in courtrooms. He was the monster parents invoked to make children behave. The ghost that haunted every neighborhood from Red Hook to Bay Ridge. "You cleaned that room last," Patricia said. "After midnight, when family visits end. You go in, you clean quickly and quietly, and you leave. You don't look at the patient. You don't touch anything you don't have to. You don't make conversation with anyone." She paused. "And whatever you see or hear in there, you didn't." "I understand." "I'm serious, Anna. These people, they're not like regular families. They don't follow rules. They don't respect boundaries. And they remember faces." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "You seem like a good person. Keep your head down, do your job, and get out. Don't get involved in their world." "Yes, ma'am." But Anna was already involved, wasn't she? The moment she'd accepted the shift, the moment desperation had pushed her into the orbit of Brooklyn's most dangerous family, she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The ICU smelled like disinfectant and fear. Anna worked methodically through the rooms, emptying trash, wiping surfaces, mopping floors. The routine was meditative, familiar. Her hands knew what to do even when her mind wandered. At 11:30 p.m., the ICU was quiet except for the constant symphony of monitors and ventilators. Most patients were sedated. Families had gone home. Only the night shift remained, nurses making rounds, residents catching catnaps in break rooms, and the ever-present guards outside room 607. Anna finished room 605 and steeled herself. Time to face the lion's den. She pushed her cart past the guards, different ones now, a shift change, and used her keycard to access room 607. The door clicked open. She entered quickly, keeping her eyes down. The room was larger than standard ICU suites, with upgraded furniture and equipment that spoke of money changing hands. Someone had brought in a leather recliner. Flowers covered every surface. Expensive arrangements with cards from people offering prayers and promises. The window overlooked the East River, where boats moved through the darkness like ghosts. And in the center of it all, surrounded by machines that beeped and hissed and monitored every failing system in his body, lay Enzo Caputo. Anna had seen dying patients before. The ICU was full of them. Car accident victims, heart attack survivors, elderly people whose bodies had finally given out. She'd learned to maintain professional detachment, to see them as tasks rather than tragedies. But Enzo Caputo was different. He looked peaceful. That was the first thing Anna noticed. His face in repose showed none of the cruelty she'd expected. No snarling monster. No obvious evil. Just a man, maybe late 40s, with dark hair going gray at the temples and lines around his eyes that suggested he'd smiled once, long ago. Anna began cleaning, moving quietly around the room. She emptied the trash bin, replaced the liner, wiped down the bedside table. Professional. Efficient. Invisible. But she noticed things. His hands, resting on top of the blankets, were calloused. Not the soft hands of a man who'd spent his life behind desks counting money. These were working hands, scarred knuckles, thick fingers, calluses that spoke of physical labor somewhere in his past. A faded scar ran along the left side of his neck, the kind that came from a blade that had gotten too close to something vital. And even in a coma, even with machines breathing for him, there was something about him that commanded space. An intensity that hadn't been erased by brain death. Like his body was just waiting for the moment to wake up and reclaim the world it had dominated. Anna shivered and focused on mopping the floor. Outside in the hallway, voices rose. "Can't wait forever, Tommy. The families are circling. They smell blood in the water. My uncle's not dead yet, Vincent." Anna froze, her mop suspended mid-stroke. She knew she should keep cleaning, make noise, alert them that someone was in the room. But curiosity, or maybe survival instinct, kept her silent. "He's as good as dead." That was Vincent's voice, smooth and cold. The doctors said brain death. 0 chance of recovery. We're just prolonging the inevitable. So what are you suggesting? A pause. When Vincent spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but Anna's ears had learned to catch whispers. Invisible people heard everything. "I'm suggesting we face reality. If Enzo dies, we split the territories. The Russos take Brooklyn Heights and Red Hook. The Caputos keep Bay Ridge and Bensonhurst. Clean. Peaceful. No war. If he dies," Tommy repeated slowly, "or if we help him along. I'm simply saying that nature is already taking its course. We don't need to interfere. We just need to accept the outcome." Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. She forced herself to resume mopping, the swish of water against tile loud in the sudden silence. Tommy's response was low and dangerous. "You suggesting what I think you're suggesting, cousin?" "I'm suggesting nothing. I'm stating facts." Vincent's voice moved away, down the hall. "Think about it, Tommy. Think about what's best for the family." Footsteps retreated. Tommy remained outside for another moment, then followed. Anna's hands trembled as she wrung out the mop. Someone in Enzo Caputo's own family wanted him dead. Was planning it. maybe had already started. She thought again of those strange discolorations under his fingernails, that faint chemical smell she'd noticed earlier. Not her business, she reminded herself firmly. Not her world. She was just the cleaning lady. She saw nothing, heard nothing, knew nothing. Anna finished quickly and pushed her cart into the hallway. The guards had moved to the far end of the corridor, smoking by the stairwell despite hospital policy. They didn't look at her as she passed. Invisible. Always invisible. Anna was cleaning room 611 when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Jennifer, babysitter Anna, I'm so sorry. My mom fell and broke her hip. I have to fly to Ohio tomorrow morning. Won't be back until after New Year's. I can't watch Nancy this week. Anna read the message 3 times, as if repetition might change the words. No. No, no, no. She stepped into the supply closet and dialed Jennifer's number with shaking fingers. Anna, I'm so sorry. Jennifer, please. I'm begging you. I need these shifts. Just 2 more nights. I'll pay you double. I can't. My flight leaves at 6 a.m. I'm literally packing right now. Is there anyone else who could? Anna. Jennifer's voice was kind but firm. It's 2 days before Christmas. Everyone I know is either traveling or already committed. I've texted everyone in my contact list. There's no one. Anna closed her eyes. Okay. Thank you for trying. She hung up and stood in the darkness of the supply closet, surrounded by boxes of gloves and sterile packaging, and tried not to cry. Nancy's daycare was closed for the holidays. Anna had no family. Her parents were dead, and Marcus's family had ghosted her after the funeral. No close friends with flexibility. No neighbors she trusted enough to ask. And she needed these shifts. Needed the double pay. Needed the money to keep the landlord from throwing them onto the street on December 26th. Anna looked around the supply closet. It was small, cramped, far from the nurse's station. Nobody came here much. It was stocked with overflow supplies, equipment that was rarely needed. It was also warm, quiet, hidden. An impossible idea began to form in Anna's mind. She could bring Nancy to the hospital, hide her here in this closet, check on her every 20 minutes during her shift. It was only 2 nights. Nancy was a good kid, quiet, obedient, used to entertaining herself with coloring books. It was crazy, dangerous, against every rule. But it was also the only option that kept a roof over her daughter's head. Anna pulled out her phone and texted her upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Vivian, who sometimes watched Nancy for an hour or 2. Anna, can you stay with Nancy tomorrow until 9 p.m.? I have to work late. I'll pay $40. The response came quickly. Mrs. Vivian. Sorry, dear. Visiting my sister in Queens tomorrow. Gone until Monday. Anna stared at the phone. Then she looked around the supply closet again, measuring it with desperate eyes, calculating risk versus reward, weighing her daughter's safety against their survival. She thought about Enzo Caputo lying in room 607, his own family plotting his death while he lay helpless. She thought about how the powerful always had options while the invisible had only impossible choices. And she made her decision. Tomorrow night, Nancy would come to the hospital. Anna would hide her in this closet with blankets and snacks and coloring books. And she would pray, to a God she wasn't sure was listening anymore, that nobody would find her daughter in the lion's den. Because desperate mothers did impossible things. And Anna Moore had just run out of possible options. December 22nd arrived cold and merciless. The kind of winter night that made New York City feel like a wind tunnel designed to punish the poor. Anna stood outside Mount Sinai's employee entrance at 9:45 p.m., a large canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder. To anyone watching, she looked like every other night shift worker arriving for another anonymous shift. Tired, bundled against the cold, unremarkable. No one could see the 5-year-old girl curled inside the bag, drowsy from Benadryl and wrapped in blankets. "Almost there, baby," Anna whispered, her breath fogging in the December air. "Just a little longer." Inside the bag, Nancy shifted slightly but didn't answer. She'd been so good about this, so brave, when Anna had explained the special secret adventure. But Anna's hands shook as she swiped her badge, and her heart hammered so hard she was certain the security guard would hear it. He barely glanced up from his phone. "Cold one tonight." "Sure is." Anna's voice sounded steadier than she felt. She navigated the familiar maze of service corridors and back stairwells, moving quickly but not running, casual but purposeful. The bag seemed to grow heavier with each step, weighted with guilt and desperation and the warm, precious life she was risking. The 6th-floor supply closet was exactly as she'd left it. Cramped, cluttered, blessedly far from the nurse's station. Anna locked the door behind her and gently extracted Nancy from the tote bag. "Here we are," she whispered, arranging blankets into a nest in the corner. "Your special fort." Nancy blinked sleepily, clutching Mr. Hop, a worn stuffed rabbit with one ear permanently bent and button eyes that had been resewn twice. She looked around the small space with the solemn acceptance of a child who'd learned not to ask too many questions. "It's dark, Mommy." "I know, baby. But you have your flashlight, see?" Anna placed a small LED flashlight beside the blankets. "And your coloring books. And snacks." She arranged juice boxes and crackers within reach. "I'll come check on you every 20 minutes, okay? Every single time. I promise." "Every 20 minutes," Nancy repeated, hugging Mr. Hop tighter. "Can you be brave for Mommy? Can you be quiet like a mouse?" Nancy nodded, though her lower lip trembled slightly. "I can be brave." Anna kissed her forehead, breathing in the smell of her daughter's strawberry shampoo, memorizing this moment in case everything went wrong. "I love you to the moon and back." "To the moon and back," Nancy whispered. Anna forced herself to leave, locking the closet door behind her with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Anna moved through her shift in a fog of anxiety, her internal clock counting down 20-minute intervals with metronomic precision. 10:23 p.m. Check on Nancy. She's coloring a picture of a rainbow, humming softly to herself. 10:47 p.m. Nancy's wrapped in blankets, talking to Mr. Hop in whispers about butterflies and clouds. 11:15 p.m. Nancy's eating crackers, her flashlight making shadow puppets on the wall. 11:38 p.m. Nancy's shivering despite the blankets. The closet is cold. Anna had forgotten that this corner of the building never got proper heat. 12:02 a.m. Nancy's curled in a ball trying to stay warm. I'm okay, Mommy. Just a little cold. 12:26 a.m. Nancy's teeth are chattering. Anna wraps her in an additional blanket from the linen cart. Guilt eating at her insides. 12:51 a.m. Nancy's fighting sleep, her eyes drooping. Don't want to sleep. Want to wait for you. 1:18 a.m. Nancy's dozing, Mr. Hop clutched to her chest. 1:43 a.m. Nancy's awake again, shivering harder now. Mommy, I'm really cold. 2:09 a.m. Anna brings hot water from the break room in a plastic bottle, wraps it in a towel for warmth. Nancy holds it gratefully. At 2:32 a.m., Anna's radio crackled to life. Cleaning to room 619. Code brown. Immediate response needed. Anna's stomach sank. Code brown meant biohazard cleanup. Messy, time-consuming, urgent. The kind of job that would take at least 40 minutes. She ran to the supply closet first. Nancy, baby, Mommy has to do a big cleaning job. I'll be longer than 20 minutes this time, okay? But I'll be back as soon as I can. Nancy nodded, though her eyes were wide with worry. How long? Maybe an hour. Can you be brave for 1 hour? I'll be brave, Nancy whispered, but her voice was small and scared. Anna kissed her quickly and ran to room 619, where a patient with C. diff had created exactly the nightmare scenario she dreaded. Nancy's perspective. The closet was so cold. Nancy had been brave for Mommy. She'd colored 4 pictures. She'd eaten her crackers even though her tummy felt funny. She'd talked to Mr. Hop about all the things they'd do when Christmas came. Maybe they'd get a tree this year, a small one, and Nancy would make paper ornaments like they did in school. But Mommy had been gone for a long time now. Longer than 20 minutes. Longer than forever. And Nancy was so cold. She wrapped both blankets around herself and Mr. Hop, but it didn't help. The cold came up through the floor and down from the ceiling and in through the walls. Her fingers felt like ice cubes. Her nose was running. Her whole body was shaking. Nancy tried to be brave like Mommy asked, but her eyes kept leaking tears that she couldn't stop. "And Mr. Hop," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "I'm as scared." Mr. Hop didn't answer. He never did. But he was warm and soft and smelled like home. Nancy looked at the door. Mommy had said to stay in the closet. But Mommy had also said she'd be back in 20 minutes, and it had been much, much longer than that. What if Mommy couldn't find her? What if Mommy forgot where she was? Nancy's 5-year-old logic decided, if she couldn't stay warm here, she had to find somewhere else. Somewhere Mommy could find her. Somewhere with light and heat and maybe people who could help. She clutched Mr. Hop tight and opened the closet door. The hallway was bright and scary, filled with beeping sounds and strange smells. Nancy padded down the corridor in her pink sneakers. staying close to the wall like Mommy did when they played hide and seek. Most of the rooms were dark. Some had sleeping people with tubes and wires. Some had scary machines that hissed and beeped. Nancy walked past them all, searching for somewhere safe. Then she saw it. Room 607, glowing with soft warm light at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open, and unlike the other rooms, this one was quiet, peaceful. Nancy peeked inside. A man was sleeping in the bed, his eyes closed, his face calm. He had machines around him like the other people, but somehow he looked different. Less scary. More sad. The sleeping man looked sad, Nancy whispered to Mr. Hop. And cold. Like us. She remembered what Mommy always said when Nancy had bad dreams. You're safe, baby. I'm here. You're not alone. Maybe the sleeping man needed someone to tell him that too. Nancy crept into the room, her pink sneakers silent on the tile floor. She looked at all the wires and tubes and blinking lights, not really understanding what they meant but sensing they were important. The bed was high, but there was a step stool nearby. Nancy climbed up carefully, Mr. Hop tucked under one arm. The blankets were warm. So warm. Nancy let out a small sigh of relief as she crawled onto the bed, being very careful not to touch any of the scary wires. The sleeping man's chest rose and fell slowly. His shirt was soft. His breathing made a quiet rhythm that reminded Nancy of the ocean sounds on Mommy's meditation app. Don't be scared, sleeping man, Nancy whispered. The same words Mommy used for her nightmares. I'm here. She curled up against his side, her head resting on his chest, directly over his heart. Mr. Hop nestled between them. The warmth from the blankets and the sleeping man's body soaked into Nancy's frozen bones. For the first time in hours, she stopped shivering. She could hear his heartbeat under her ear. Steady, strong like a lullaby. Her breath warmed his neck where the collar of his hospital gown had fallen open. You're not alone, Nancy murmured, her eyes already closing. I'm here. You're safe. Within minutes, exhausted and finally warm, Nancy fell into deep sleep. She didn't know that her body temperature ran 2 degrees hotter than normal, a genetic condition called familial dysautonomia that her mother couldn't afford to have properly diagnosed. She didn't know that her small body, pressed against Enzo Caputo's chest for hours, was radiating heat directly into his core. She didn't know that her positioning, head over heart, breath warming his carotid artery, was creating what doctors would later call a perfect biological storm. She only knew that the sleeping man's heartbeat was strong and steady, and for the first time all night she felt safe. 6:47 a.m. Night nurse Karen Wilson had worked at Mount Sinai for 12 years. She'd seen everything the ICU could throw at her. Codes, crashes, miracles, and losses. She prided herself on staying calm in chaos. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw when she entered room 607 for the routine 6:45 a.m. vitals check. Enzo Caputo's eyes were open. Not the vacant stare of brain death. Not the random eye movements of vegetative state. His eyes were open, aware, tracking her movement as she entered the room. And a small child, a little girl with brown hair and pink sneakers, clutching a stuffed rabbit, was sleeping peacefully on his chest. Karen screamed. The sound ripped through the quiet ICU like a fire alarm. Within seconds, the peaceful dawn erupted into chaos. Dr. Hoffman burst through the door, still wearing yesterday's scrubs, his hair standing on end from a too-short nap in the call room. What? He stopped dead. Enzo Caputo's monitors told an impossible story. Heart rate, 72 BPM, steady and strong. Blood pressure, 118/76, perfectly normal. Oxygen saturation, 98%. Brain activity, spiking across regions that had been flatlined for 6 months. "Get her off him," one of the guards shouted, lunging for Nancy. "Don't touch her." Dr. Hoffman's voice cracked like a whip. His eyes were locked on the monitors, his brain racing through impossible calculations. "Don't move anything. Don't change anything. Jesus Christ! Someone get neurology up here. Now." Nancy stirred at the noise, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around at all the strangers and clutched Mr. Hop tighter, but she didn't move from her position on Enzo's chest. "Mommy," she said in a small, scared voice. "Where the hell did this kid come from?" Tommy Caputo appeared in the doorway, his gun visible under his jacket. "I don't know, but don't move her." Dr. Hoffman was pulling up readouts on the monitors, his hands shaking. "His brain activity is, this isn't possible. Brain-dead patients don't just wake up. They don't." Anna came running down the hallway, still wearing biohazard gloves from room 619. She saw the crowd, saw the open door, saw Nancy on the bed, and her world tilted sideways. "Nancy!" She pushed through the crowd, her heart exploding with terror. "Oh God, Nancy, baby!" "Ma'am, you can't." A security guard grabbed her arm. "That's my daughter. Let me go." Enzo's eyes tracked Anna's voice. His monitors beeped faster as she struggled. "Everyone stop moving." Dr. Hoffman shouted. He pointed at Anna. You're the mother." "Yes, I can explain." "Explain later. Right now, I need you to stay calm." He looked at Nancy, then at Enzo, then at the monitors displaying data that violated everything he knew about neurology. "When did your daughter get on this bed?" "I don't." Anna's mind raced. "Maybe 3 a.m.? I don't know. I was cleaning another room." 3 a.m., Dr. Hoffman repeated. He pulled up the historical data on Enzo's monitors. His vitals started changing at 3:17 a.m. Brain activity began increasing at 3:42 a.m. By 6 a.m., he was showing signs of consciousness. He looked at Nancy, still curled against Enzo's chest. "She's been on him for almost 4 hours." "So," Tommy demanded, "so brain-dead patients don't wake up, Mr. Caputo. Ever. The cerebral cortex was destroyed. There was no pathway to recovery." Dr. Hoffman's voice dropped to a whisper. "But somehow, in the 4 hours this child has been in physical contact with your uncle, his brain has rebooted itself." Silence crashed through the room. Nancy, oblivious to the miracle she'd caused, looked up at Anna with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I was so cold." And the sleeping man looked sad. I just wanted to help him not be lonely. Anna climbed onto the bed and gathered Nancy into her arms, her whole body shaking. It's okay, baby. You're okay. Everything's okay. But nothing was okay, because Enzo Caputo's eyes were still open, still aware, still watching. And his right hand, paralyzed for 6 months, twitched slightly toward the child who'd brought him back from the dead. Dr. Hoffman stared at his monitors, his medical degree suddenly useless against the impossible. This is medically impossible, he whispered. But impossible or not, it had happened. The dead man had awakened. And the world, Anna's world, Enzo's world, everyone's world, would never be the same. By noon, Mount Sinai Hospital had become a war zone with 3 armies converging on the 6th floor, each with their own agenda, each certain they understood what had happened in room 607. They were all wrong. The medical investigation. Dr. Richard Hoffman stood in the radiology reading room, surrounded by brain scans that made no sense. Around him, 4 neurologists from Columbia Presbyterian stared at the same images, their faces reflecting the same confusion he felt. This was taken 6 days ago, Dr. Hoffman said, pointing to the first scan. The images showed Enzo Caputo's brain lit up like a city map, but a city after the apocalypse. Vast regions of darkness where neural activity should have been. Extensive damage to the cerebral cortex. No electrical activity in the frontal lobe. The brainstem was functioning, but barely. We declared him brain dead based on this. He pulled up the second scan, taken 2 hours ago. And this is impossible. The brain that appeared on screen was different. Not healthy. There was still significant damage, still regions of darkness. But sections that had been dead were now glowing with activity. Neural pathways that shouldn't exist were firing. The frontal lobe showed scattered electrical impulses. Dr. Sarah Vivian, a young resident with a reputation for thinking outside traditional medical boxes, leaned forward. It's like watching a computer reboot. Sector by sector, region by region, the brain is turning back on. Brains don't reboot, Dr. Vivian, one of the Columbia neurologists said. Once the cortex is destroyed, it's destroyed. Neurons don't regenerate. Brain death is permanent. Except it isn't, Dr. Hoffman said quietly. Because Enzo Caputo is awake. He's tracking faces. His autonomic responses are functioning. He's locked in, can't speak or move voluntarily yet, but he's conscious. Aware. The man we declared dead yesterday is alive today. Silence settled over the room like snow. The child, Dr. Vivian said. We need to talk about the child. Dr. Hoffman nodded. Nancy Moore, 5 years old, was in physical contact with the patient for approximately 4 hours, from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., positioned with her head on his chest, directly over his heart. Her vitals began changing at 3:17 a.m. Coincidence, the Columbia neurologist said. Children don't heal brain death through osmosis. What if it's not osmosis? Dr. Vivian pulled up Nancy's medical records on her tablet. The mother mentioned her daughter has a condition, familial dysautonomia. I looked it up. It's a rare genetic disorder affecting the autonomic nervous system. One of the symptoms is dysregulation of body temperature. Patients run consistently hotter than normal, sometimes 2 to 3 degrees above baseline. Dr. Hoffman felt something click in his mind. Sustained heat therapy. Exactly. Therapeutic hypothermia has been used for decades to protect the brain after cardiac arrest. But there's emerging research on controlled hyperthermia, using precise heat application to stimulate neural regeneration. Dr. Vivian's words came faster, excited. What if this child, with her elevated body temperature, positioned directly over his heart for 4 hours, essentially provided continuous, targeted heat therapy to his core? That's speculative at best. Plus her biorhythms, Dr. Vivian continued. Children have faster heart rates, faster respiratory rates. There's research suggesting that synchronized biorhythms can affect autonomic function. Her heart beating against his chest, her breath warming his carotid artery, her body heat penetrating his core for 4 continuous hours. Dr. Hoffman stared at Enzo's brain scans. The most improbable physiological rescue in medical history. Or a coincidence, the Columbia neurologist insisted. Then test it, Dr. Hoffman said. The family wants the child to visit again. We monitor everything. Heart rate, brain activity, oxygen levels, neural response. If there's a correlation between her presence and his improvement, we'll see it. Tommy Caputo stood at his uncle's bedside, his hands clenched into fists. Enzo's eyes tracked his movement, aware and alert in a face that couldn't yet speak. Uncle Enzo, Tommy said, his voice rough with emotion. You're really in there, aren't you? You can hear me. Enzo's right eye twitched, the closest thing to a response he could manage. The doctors say you might recover. Might be able to talk again, move again. Tommy leaned closer. When you can, we need to know who did this. Who shot you? Who wanted you dead? Enzo's monitors beeped steadily, but his eyes shifted toward the door where Vincent Russo had just entered, carrying an elaborate flower arrangement. Tommy, Vincent said warmly, his smile perfect. Good news about Uncle Enzo. A Christmas miracle, they're calling it. Tommy watched his uncle's face, watched the way Enzo's eyes tracked Vincent across the room, watched the subtle tension that appeared in Enzo's jaw. Yeah, Tommy said slowly. A miracle. Vincent placed the flowers on the windowsill. The family's gathering tonight. We need to discuss next steps, succession planning. He's not dead, Vincent. Of course not. I just meant. The door opened again. Anna entered, holding Nancy's hand. The little girl clutched her stuffed rabbit and looked around nervously at all the scary men in suits. Enzo's monitors changed immediately. His heart rate, which had been elevated, dropped to a calm, steady rhythm. His blood pressure normalized. The tension lines around his eyes softened. Mommy, the sleeping man is awake now, Nancy whispered. Anna tried to back out. We can come back later. No. Tommy's voice was sharp. Stay. Please. Nancy approached the bed cautiously. Hi, sleeping man. Do you remember me? I'm Nancy. We were sleeping buddies. Enzo's eyes tracked her face. One finger on his right hand twitched, as if trying to reach for her. The doctors say you helped him, Tommy said to Nancy. They say you made him better. Nancy looked confused. I just didn't want him to be lonely. Mommy says nobody should be alone when they're sad. For 15 minutes, Nancy stood by the bed, chattering about her stuffed rabbit and her coloring books and the snowman she wanted to build. Anna tried to quiet her, but Tommy shook his head. Let her talk. Look at the monitors. Enzo's vitals were perfect. Calm. Stable. Like Nancy's presence was medicine the machines couldn't provide. Then Anna said, Come on, Nancy. We need to go. But I want to stay with the sleeping man. Now, baby. The moment they left, Enzo's monitors erupted. Heart rate spiking. Blood pressure rising. The machines screaming distress. Dr. Hoffman rushed in. What happened? The kid left, Tommy said, staring at the monitors. She left and he. Get them back. Now. Anna and Nancy were brought back. The moment Nancy took Enzo's hand, his vitals stabilized. Medically impossible, Dr. Hoffman murmured. But undeniable. Vincent watched from the corner, his expression unreadable. But his eyes were cold as winter ice. Special Agent Robert Morrison found Anna in the hospital cafeteria at 2 p.m., nursing a cold cup of coffee while Nancy colored at the table beside her. Ms. Moore. I'm Agent Morrison, FBI. He flashed his badge. I need to ask you some questions. Anna's stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? That depends. Morrison sat down uninvited. You just saved the most dangerous man in New York. That makes you either very lucky or very involved. I'm a cleaning lady. I'm not involved in anything. Your daughter spent 4 hours in physical contact with a man we've been investigating for racketeering, extortion, money laundering, and murder. That's quite a coincidence. It was an accident. She was cold, she wandered. From where? Morrison's eyes were sharp. Where was she before she wandered into a secure ICU room? Anna's hands trembled around her coffee cup. She couldn't tell him about the supply closet. Couldn't admit to smuggling Nancy into the hospital. She was with me. I was working. At 3 a.m. with your 5-year-old daughter. Morrison leaned back. Ms. Moore, I don't care about hospital policy violations. I care about attempted murder. Someone tried to kill Enzo Caputo 6 months ago. Someone in his own organization. Anna looked up sharply. You think someone in his family? We've been reviewing security footage. No one unauthorized entered his room before the shooting. No one tampered with his medication after. But his condition deteriorated in ways that don't match his injuries. Toxicology shows trace amounts of substances that shouldn't be there. Morrison pulled out a folder. Someone close to him is trying to finish the job. And now your daughter has inconveniently brought him back. We didn't mean to. I believe you. But you're caught in this now. The family isn't going to let you walk away. Not when your daughter is the only thing keeping their boss alive. Anna felt the walls closing in. What do I do? Stay close. Keep your eyes open. And if you see or hear anything suspicious, anything at all, you call me. He slid a card across the table. Because whoever tried to kill Enzo Caputo once will try again. And next time your daughter might be in the way. At 4 p.m., Anna was summoned to the hospital administrator's office. Gerald Krantz sat behind his desk, flanked by the head of security and legal counsel. Ms. Moore, you brought an unauthorized person onto a secure floor. You violated patient privacy. You endangered your child and potentially compromised patient care. Krantz's voice was ice. You're terminated, effective immediately. Anna's world tilted. Please. I need this job. I have a daughter. You should have thought of that before. The door burst open. Tommy Caputo entered, 2 lawyers behind him. Mr. Krantz, Tommy said pleasantly. I'm here on behalf of the Caputo family. We'd like to discuss Ms. Moore's employment. Krantz paled. Mr. Caputo, hospital policy. My uncle is alive because of this woman's daughter. The doctors confirm that the child's presence has measurable therapeutic benefit. So here's what's going to happen. Ms. Moore keeps her job. She and her daughter get unlimited access to my uncle's room. And you're going to thank her for saving a man's life. We can't just ignore. Tommy leaned forward. His voice dropped. Yes. You can. 20 minutes later, Anna walked out with her job intact, a raise she hadn't asked for, and the sickening realization that she was no longer invisible. The mob boss's family had claimed her. The FBI was watching her. And somewhere in the hospital, someone who'd tried to kill Enzo Caputo once was planning to finish what they'd started. Anna held Nancy's hand and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. All because her daughter had been cold. All because a little girl had shown kindness to a monster. All because miracles, it turned out, came with a price. December 25th. Christmas Day. Enzo Caputo existed in a prison of flesh and bone. His mind was awake, fully, terribly awake, but his body refused to obey. He could see the winter sun streaming through the hospital window, could hear the distant sound of Christmas carols from the children's ward, could feel every tube and wire tethering him to machines that kept him alive. But he couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't scream. The doctors called it locked-in syndrome. Enzo called it hell. He lay in the silence of room 607, his eyes the only part of him that still obeyed his commands, and tried to piece together the fragments of memory that swirled through his consciousness like debris after an explosion. The ambush. October 15th. Outside his restaurant in Carroll Gardens. The memory came in flashes. The black van screeching to a stop, the staccato crack of AK-47s, his driver's head exploding in a spray of red, the impact of bullets punching through his chest like hammers. Pain. Darkness. The ICU. Doctors speaking in hushed tones. More fragments. Tommy's voice, angry and scared. The steady beep of machines. The feeling of drowning, of sinking into an ocean that had no bottom. Vincent's face, the night before the shooting. This memory was clearer, sharper. They'd been at Enzo's house in Bay Ridge, sharing wine from the bottle Enzo kept for special occasions. A 1982 Barolo, worth $3,000. Vincent had poured, insisted on pouring, and raised his glass in a toast. To family, Vincent had said, blood above all. Enzo had drunk deeply. The wine had tasted slightly off, bitter, metallic, but he'd assumed the bottle had turned poison. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Vincent had poisoned him. Slowly, carefully, probably for weeks before the shooting, weakening him from the inside while planning the final blow. But Enzo had survived the shooting, and so the poison had to finish what the bullets couldn't. 6 months of darkness. 6 months of drowning. Enzo remembered the coma like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Trapped in his own body, aware but unable to respond, sinking deeper into an abyss where consciousness became a flickering candle in infinite night. And then, warmth. A heartbeat against his chest. A small voice. Don't be scared, sleeping man. I'm here. Nancy. Enzo's eyes tracked to the door, waiting. The doctors had set up eye-tracking technology. A camera that followed his gaze, software that translated his eye movements into words on a screen. Slow, exhausting communication, but it was something. The door opened. Anna entered, Nancy's hand in hers. Enzo's monitors responded immediately. Heart rate dropping from 89 to 72, blood pressure normalizing, the tension in his readings evaporating like morning mist. Hi, Mr. Enzo. Nancy bounded to his bedside, clutching a piece of paper covered in crayon drawings. I made you a Christmas picture. See, that's the sun, and those are flowers, and that's you and me and Mommy. We're holding hands because we're friends now. Anna tried to pull her back. Nancy, Mr. Caputo needs rest. But Dr. Vivian, monitoring from the corner, shook her head. Actually, let her stay. His vitals are better with her here than they've been in days. Nancy climbed onto the chair beside Enzo's bed and launched into a story about Mr. Hop, her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hop was very brave yesterday because we saw a big dog in the park and he didn't cry even though he was scared. Mommy says being brave means being scared but doing things anyway. Are you brave, Mr. Enzo? Enzo's eyes moved to the yes position on his communication board. I knew it. You look brave. Nancy studied his face with the solemn intensity of a 5-year-old. But you also look sad. Why do you look so sad? Did someone hurt you? Enzo's eyes moved to yes again. Bad people hurt you, Nancy said. Nodding like this made perfect sense. Mommy says bad people hurt you, but you're not bad, you're just sleeping. Well, you were sleeping. Now you're awake but quiet. She reached for his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his. It's okay to be quiet. Mr. Hop is quiet too. But we're still friends. Something cracked in Enzo's chest. Not physical, he would have felt that. This was deeper. A fracture in the armor he'd spent 47 years building around whatever remained of his humanity. For 15 minutes, Nancy chattered about butterflies and clouds and the snowman she wanted to build. She told him about her favorite color, purple, and her favorite food, pizza with extra cheese, and how she was learning to read at school. Anna stood against the wall, her face a mixture of embarrassment and wonder as her daughter befriended Brooklyn's most feared crime lord through sheer, innocent persistence. Dr. Vivian took notes, documenting the way Enzo's entire physiology responded to the child's presence. Heart rate steady, blood pressure normal. Even his brain activity, visible on the monitors, showed patterns of calm focus rather than the agitated confusion that characterized most locked-in patients. "It's remarkable," Dr. Vivian murmured. "She's better than any medication we could prescribe." When Anna finally said they had to leave, visiting hours ending, Nancy needing dinner, the little girl squeezed Enzo's hand one more time. "I'll come back tomorrow, okay? And I'll bring more pictures. Don't be lonely, Mr. Enzo. You're not alone anymore." The moment they left, Enzo's monitors betrayed him. Heart rate spiking to 95. Blood pressure climbing. The machines screaming the distress he couldn't voice. Tommy found Anna in the hospital cafeteria on December 26th. She was eating a sad sandwich from the vending machine, Nancy coloring beside her, when he slid into the booth across from them. "Ms. Moore, can we talk?" Anna's shoulders tensed. "I'm on my lunch break. This will only take a minute." Tommy placed a manila envelope on the table. "My uncle is getting better because of your daughter. The doctors confirm it. So the family wants to show our appreciation." Anna stared at the envelope like it might explode. "What is that?" $100,000. Cash. Tax-free. Tommy's voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "For your continued care of Uncle Enzo. Bring Nancy to visit daily. Let her do whatever it is she does that helps him. That's all we're asking." Anna's hands trembled. $100,000. More money than she'd earned in the last 5 years combined. Enough to pay off her debts, move to a better apartment, give Nancy the life she deserved. "I can't accept this." Tommy blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said no. I don't want your money." Anna pushed the envelope back across the table. "Nancy visits your uncle because she wants to. Because she's a kind child who doesn't see monsters where everyone else does. I won't turn that into a transaction." "Ms. Moore, I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly. You want to buy my silence, my cooperation, my daughter's innocence. The answer is no." Anna stood, gathering Nancy's crayons. "Come on, baby. We're leaving." "Wait." Tommy's voice was sharper now, frustrated. $500,000. $500,000 cash, no strings attached. You never have to work another day in your life. Anna looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment Tommy saw past the tired cleaning lady to the woman underneath. A woman who'd survived loss and poverty and every cruelty the world could throw at her. A woman who'd kept her dignity when everything else had been stripped away. "My daughter's kindness is not for sale, Mr. Caputo. Not for 100,000. Not for 1,000,000. Not for any amount you could offer." She took Nancy's hand. "And if you try to force it, we'll stop coming entirely." She walked away, leaving Tommy sitting alone with $500,000 in cash that suddenly felt worthless. Enzo watched the entire exchange on the security monitor Tommy had installed in room 607. The screen was small, tucked in the corner where family could keep watch, but Enzo's eyes saw everything. He watched Anna refuse more money than most people earned in a lifetime. He watched her walk away from the one thing that could solve all her problems. He watched her choose dignity over survival, principle over pragmatism. In 47 years, Enzo Caputo had never met anyone who refused his family's money. Everyone had a price. Every single person could be bought, with cash or threats or promises or fear. Everyone except this exhausted woman in a janitor's uniform who saw his nephew's offer for exactly what it was: an attempt to buy something precious and turn it into commerce. Anna Moore had done something impossible. She'd shown him kindness without agenda. Her daughter had saved his life without expecting reward. They'd given him something he hadn't felt since childhood: hope. Enzo's eyes tracked back to the screen, where Tommy sat alone, confused by a refusal he couldn't comprehend. In Tommy's world, in Enzo's world, everything was transactional. Loyalty was purchased. Love was leverage. Kindness was weakness. But Nancy didn't live in that world. Neither did Anna. They'd stumbled into his orbit by accident, bringing with them something Enzo had forgotten existed: genuine, uncomplicated human compassion. And it was destroying every certainty he'd built his empire on. The door opened. Vincent entered, carrying flowers and wearing his practiced expression of concern. "Enzo, how are you feeling today?" Enzo's monitors spiked immediately, heart rate jumping to 102, blood pressure climbing, the machine screaming what his voice couldn't. Vincent's smile faltered. "The doctors say you're improving. That's wonderful news." Enzo's eyes locked on his cousin's face, and in that locked-in prison of his body, with only his eyes to communicate, Enzo Caputo conveyed everything he knew. "I know what you did. I remember the wine. I remember your face. I know you poisoned me. I know you're the one who wants me dead." Vincent's smile froze. For just a moment, a single unguarded moment, the mask slipped. His eyes went cold, calculating, trapped. "Well," Vincent said, his voice too bright, "I should let you rest." He left quickly, and Enzo watched him go, his heart hammering against his ribs. Vincent knew that Enzo knew, which meant the game had changed. Vincent would have to try again. Soon. Before Enzo could speak, before he could name his would-be murderer, before the FBI or the family or anyone else could stop him. And this time, anyone who got in the way, even a 5-year-old girl with a stuffed rabbit, would be collateral damage. Enzo stared at the ceiling, trapped in his silent prison, and felt fear grip him in a way that violence never had. Not fear for himself. Fear for Nancy. For Anna. For the two people who'd shown him humanity when he deserved none. The two people Vincent would destroy without hesitation if they stood between him and power. Enzo had to warn them. Had to protect them. Had to find a way to speak before silence killed them all. But his voice remained trapped behind useless lips, and time was running out. December 28th. 6 days after Enzo Caputo opened his eyes. Nancy sat cross-legged on the chair beside Enzo's bed, holding up her latest masterpiece, a crayon drawing of 3 figures holding hands under a smiling sun. The proportions were all wrong, the colors bleeding outside the lines, but she was immensely proud of it. "See, Mr. Enzo? That's you, and that's me, and that's Mommy. And we're at the park because when you get better, we're gonna go to the park together. Mommy says maybe in the spring when it's warm." Nancy pointed to a blob of green. "That's Mr. Hop. I drew him extra big because he's very important." Anna stood by the window, pretending to look at her phone while actually watching Enzo's monitors. After 6 days of daily visits, she'd learned to read them almost as well as the nurses. Heart rate, 74. Blood pressure, 118/78. Oxygen saturation, 97%. All normal. All perfect. All because of Nancy. Enzo's eyes were locked on Nancy's face, tracking her animated gestures as she explained every detail of her drawing. His mouth moved slightly, had been moving more each day, small twitches that the speech therapist said were promising but slow. "And this is the ice cream truck," Nancy continued, pointing to something that looked like a purple rectangle with wheels. "Because ice cream makes everyone happy, even sad sleeping. I mean awake, men like you." Enzo's mouth moved again. His lips formed shapes, practicing sounds that wouldn't come. "It's okay if you can't talk yet," Nancy said kindly. "Mr. Hop couldn't talk for a whole year after I got him because his voice was stuck. But then one day I heard him, and he's been talking ever since. Your voice is just stuck right now. It'll come back." Enzo's eyes moved to the yes position on his communication board. Nancy beamed. "See? You understand. That's the hardest part. Once you understand the words." Enzo's mouth opened wider. His throat worked. Something was different this time. Anna could see it in the way his whole body tensed with effort, the way the monitors showed his heart rate climbing not from distress but from exertion. "Nan." The sound was barely a whisper, rough as sandpaper, but it was sound. Real, actual sound coming from a mouth that had been silent for 6 months. "Nan, sigh." The room froze. Nancy's eyes went wide. Anna's phone clattered to the floor. Dr. Vivian, who'd been making notes in the corner, dropped her tablet. "You said my name." Nancy shrieked, bouncing in her chair. "You said Nancy. Mr. Enzo, you said my name. You remember me. Code, stroke protocol. No, wait." Dr. Vivian was already hitting the call button. "We need Dr. Hoffman in here." "No." "And speech therapy. And neurology. Mr. Caputo just spoke." Within 90 seconds, room 607 flooded with medical staff. Dr. Hoffman pushed through the crowd, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mr. Caputo, can you repeat what you said?" Enzo's eyes found Nancy again. His mouth moved with visible effort. "Nan, sigh." "Jesus Christ," Dr. Hoffman breathed. "Get speech therapy up here immediately. And I want a full neurological workup." brain scans, motor function tests, everything. Nancy, oblivious to the medical miracle she'd witnessed, threw her arms around Anna. "Mommy, he knows my name. He can talk now." Anna held her daughter tight, tears streaming down her face. She didn't understand the science, didn't understand how any of this was possible. She only knew that 6 days ago, this man had been declared brain dead. And now he was speaking her daughter's name. Enzo's eyes tracked Anna, and for the first time, she saw past the mob boss, past the monster, past everything his reputation said he was. She saw a man looking at her daughter with an expression she recognized because she'd felt it herself 1,000 times. Gratitude. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. Over the next 48 hours, Room 607 became a research laboratory. Speech therapists worked with Enzo for hours each day, and his progress shocked everyone. Words that should have taken weeks to recover came in days. By December 30th, he could speak in short sentences, his voice raspy but intelligible. Nancy's presence accelerated everything. When she visited, Enzo's brain showed heightened activity in language centers. When she left, his progress slowed. "It's unprecedented," Dr. Vivian told her assembled team on December 31st. "But we need to understand what actually happened here. How did a brain-dead patient recover?" She pulled up toxicology reports that had been running since Enzo's awakening. These results came back this morning. They showed trace amounts of thallium in his blood, specifically thallium sulfate. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward. "That's a poison. A very specific poison. Slow-acting neurotoxin. In small doses, it mimics other conditions. Weakness, confusion, organ failure. It's nearly undetectable unless you're specifically looking for it." Dr. Vivian pulled up Enzo's medical timeline. His gunshot wounds from October were serious but survivable. He should have recovered. Instead, he deteriorated steadily over 6 weeks. That's consistent with ongoing thallium exposure. "Someone was poisoning him," Dr. Hoffman said slowly. "The shooting didn't kill him, so someone finished the job with poison." "Yes. And by mid-December, the accumulated toxin had essentially shut down his neural function. That's what we mistook for brain death." Dr. Vivian pulled up the scans from December 22nd. But then Nancy Moore spent 4 hours in direct contact with him. Her elevated body temperature, we're talking about 101.2 degrees sustained, combined with her positioning over his heart, essentially created a fever response in his body. "Fever burns out toxins," one of the residents said. "Exactly. The sustained heat triggered his immune system to fight the poison." Her heartbeat, pressed directly against his chest, provided rhythmic stimulation to his cardiac function. Her breath, warming his carotid artery, increased blood flow to the brain. Dr. Vivian's voice filled with wonder. That little girl, completely by accident, provided the perfect combination of factors to jumpstart a dying system. "The most improbable physiological rescue in medical history," Dr. Hoffman murmured. "We need to report the poisoning," Dr. Vivian said. "This is attempted murder." On New Year's Eve, with his voice stronger and his mind clear, Enzo pulled Dr. Hoffman close during an examination. FBI, Enzo whispered. Agent Morrison. Mr. Caputo, you should rest. Vincent. Enzo's hand gripped Dr. Hoffman's wrist with surprising strength. My cousin. Vincent. Poisoned me. Wine. Before. Shooting. For weeks. Dr. Hoffman's face went pale. You're saying your cousin tried to kill you? Yes. Call Morrison. Now. 20 minutes later, FBI agent Morrison stood at Enzo's bedside, recording every word. Vincent Russo, Enzo said, each word deliberate. My cousin. Consigliera. He poisoned my wine. Weeks before the shooting, weakened me. Made sure bullets would finish the job. Why? Morrison asked. Power. Territory. He made deal with the Gambinos. Kill me. Split my empire. Enzo's voice was getting stronger with use. He thought I was dead. Thought poison did what bullets couldn't. Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. Within an hour, FBI forensic accountants were tearing through Vincent Russo's financial records. What they found was damning. Payments from the Gambino family totaling $2.3 million over 6 months. Communications with known hitmen. Purchases of thallium sulfate through a chemical supply company. We can't arrest him yet, Morrison told Enzo. Your testimony is compelling, but your competency could be questioned. You just came out of a coma. Any defense attorney would tear you apart on the stand. Then, wait, Enzo said. Keep watching. Vincent will try again. He knows. I know. He won't wait long. We'll have surveillance on him 24/7, Morrison promised. But Mr. Caputo, you understand what this means? Your own cousin tried to kill you. Your family is compromised. Enzo's eyes tracked to the doorway, where Nancy's laughter echoed from the hallway. Not all family. Some family, you choose. Anna was in the 6th floor supply closet, the same closet where this had all started, organizing cleaning supplies when she found Nancy's medical file mixed with her cleaning records. It must have fallen from her bag days ago. She picked it up, intending to return it to her locker, but the folder fell open. Medical terminology stared up at her. Familial dysautonomia. Genetic disorder. Autonomic nervous system dysfunction. Anna had known about Nancy's condition for years. Had known since birth that her daughter was different, that her body temperature ran hot, that she had trouble regulating basic functions. But she'd never read the full prognosis because she couldn't afford the specialists, couldn't afford the treatments, couldn't afford to face what the diagnosis meant. Now, sitting on the floor of the supply closet, Anna read the words she'd been avoiding for 5 years. Life expectancy. Significantly reduced without proper management. Patients require specialized care, regular monitoring, medications that cost $2,000 to $5,000 monthly. Common complications include cardiac dysrhythmia, respiratory failure, kidney disease. The list went on. Each line was a knife. Anna's hand shook. Nancy needed specialists. Needed treatments. Needed medications Anna couldn't afford on a janitor's salary. She'd been ignoring the symptoms, the irregular heartbeat, the breathing difficulties, the temperature regulation issues, because acknowledging them meant acknowledging she couldn't help her daughter. She'd been letting Nancy suffer because she was poor. The realization broke something inside her. Anna pressed her hands over her mouth and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place so dark and desperate she'd been pretending it didn't exist. Her daughter was sick. Had been sick her whole life. And Anna had done nothing because doing something cost money she didn't have. She was failing Nancy. Had been failing her for years. Anna cried until she had no tears left, until her throat was raw and her eyes burned and the crushing weight of maternal inadequacy had wrung every last bit of strength from her body. In room 607, Enzo watched the security monitor. The camera in the supply closet hallway showed Anna's shadow through the partially open door. Showed the way her shoulders shook. Showed her breakdown in real time. Something in Enzo's chest, something he'd thought died decades ago, twisted painfully. He'd spent 47 years building an empire on fear. He'd ordered executions, destroyed lives, built wealth on the suffering of others. He'd convinced himself that power was the only thing that mattered, that compassion was weakness, that emotion was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. But watching Anna Moore cry over her daughter's medical file, watching her break under the weight of poverty and impossible choices, Enzo felt something he hadn't felt since he was a child in his father's house before the violence started. He felt protective. Not of territory. Not of power. Not of money or status or respect. Of them. Of Anna and Nancy. Of the two people who'd saved his life and asked for nothing in return. For the first time in 47 years, Enzo Caputo wanted to protect someone not because they were useful but because they were good. And he had the power to do it. The question was, would he? January 2nd, 11:47 a.m. Vincent Russo entered room 607 carrying an extravagant bouquet of white lilies. Funeral flowers, Enzo noted with dark irony. His cousin's face wore the same expression of concern it had worn for weeks, but now Enzo could see what he'd missed before. The calculation behind the eyes, the tension in the jaw, the predator's patience of a man waiting for prey to die. Enzo, Vincent said warmly, setting the flowers on the windowsill. You're looking stronger every day. It's truly miraculous. Enzo watched his cousin approach the bed. His speech had improved significantly. Words came easier now, sentences forming with only slight hesitation. The doctors said it was remarkable. Enzo knew it was desperation. He needed his voice back before Vincent made his next move. Vincent, Enzo said, his voice steady. We need to talk. Of course. What's on your mind? I know what you did. The words hung in the air between them like a blade. Vincent's smile didn't falter, but something shifted behind his eyes. A door closing. A mask settling into place. I'm not sure what you mean. The wine. Enzo's voice grew stronger with each word. The 1982 Barolo. You poured. October 14th. Night before. The shooting. You poisoned it. Vincent's smile finally died. The transformation was remarkable. Warmth draining from his face like water from a cracked glass, leaving only cold calculation behind. You were weak, Enzo. Vincent's voice was flat now, businesslike. Soft. Going legitimate. Pulling back from the families, talking about getting out. This family needs strength. You'd become a liability. You poisoned family. Enzo struggled to sit up straighter. Blood. Our blood. Family's just business, cousin. And you were bad business. Vincent pulled a chair closer, sitting like they were discussing a restaurant deal instead of murder. The Gambinos offered a partnership. Real power. But they needed assurance the Caputo territories wouldn't fight back. So we made a deal. I remove you, they remove the competition. We split Brooklyn 3 ways. Thallium, Enzo said. Weeks of it. In my wine. In my coffee. Making me weak. Then the ambush. To finish it. You were supposed to die that night. 3 shooters, 47 rounds fired, and somehow you survived. Vincent's laugh was bitter. So the poison had to finish what bullets couldn't. And it would have worked. You were brain dead, Enzo. The doctors confirmed it. All I had to do was wait for them to pull the plug. But I woke up. Yes. Thanks to that little pest and her mother. Vincent stood, pacing to the window. That was unexpected. Inconvenient. But not insurmountable. Enzo's heart rate spiked on the monitors. The FBI knows. Agent Morrison has your financial records. The wire transfers. The thallium purchases. You're done, Vincent. Vincent turned back, and his smile was the coldest thing Enzo had ever seen. Am I? You just came out of a coma, Enzo. Any lawyer worth his fee will shred your testimony. Confused. Disoriented. Brain damaged. Hell, half the family already thinks you're not the same man who went into that coma. Morrison will. Morrison will need evidence that holds up in court. And he won't get it. Because tonight, you're going to have a tragic relapse. The doctors will say the stress was too much. Your recovery too fast. Your brain couldn't handle it. Vincent checked his watch. In 12 hours, you'll be dead for real. And this time, no little girl is going to bring you back. Vincent left room 607 and walked calmly to the elevator, nodding pleasantly to nurses and security guards. He'd always been good at wearing masks. It was how he'd survived this long in a world that ate the weak. But inside, panic churned. Enzo knew. The FBI was investigating. His carefully constructed plan was unraveling like cheap thread. He couldn't kill Enzo here. Too many witnesses, too much federal surveillance. Morrison's team was watching the hospital 24/7. But Vincent had resources. Money. Loyalty purchased through fear and favors. And most importantly, he had men willing to do anything for the right price. He pulled out a burner phone and made the call. It's me. We move tonight. 11 p.m. Mount Sinai, 6th floor, room 607. That's a hospital, boss. FBI's all over it. I know. That's why we go heavy. 4 men, automatic weapons, in and out in 90 seconds. We take out Enzo, anyone with him, and anyone who gets in the way. What about civilians? Vincent thought of the little girl with her crayon drawings, the mother who refused his money, the witnesses who could place him at the scene, who knew too much, who'd become liabilities the moment Enzo woke up. Acceptable losses, Vincent said. Everyone in that room dies. No witnesses. No survivors. We make it look like a rival hit, and by the time the FBI figures out what happened, I'll be in Aruba. You got it, boss. 11 p.m. Vincent destroyed the phone and dropped the pieces in 3 different trash cans across Manhattan. Then he went to his office in Bay Ridge and began transferring money to offshore accounts. By midnight, he'd be a ghost. By morning, he'd be free. All he had to do was tie up one loose end. One dying mob boss and the 2 innocents who'd saved him. At 10:47 p.m., Anna pushed her cleaning cart into room 607 for the final sweep of her shift. Nancy sat on the floor in the corner, coloring a new picture for Mr. Enzo. This one featuring a dragon that looked more like a purple blob with wings. We shouldn't be here this late, Anna said, checking her watch. Visiting hours ended at 9. But Mr. Enzo gets sad when I don't visit, Nancy protested. See, his face is less crinkly when I'm here. Enzo, sitting up in bed now and regaining strength daily, managed a small smile. She's right. Less crinkly. Anna shook her head but couldn't hide her own smile. Over the past 2 weeks, an impossible thing had happened. She'd started to see Enzo Caputo not as a monster, but as a man. A complicated, dangerous, deeply flawed man. But a man who looked at her daughter with genuine affection, who'd started asking Anna about her life, who seemed to be discovering his own humanity through Nancy's innocent perspective. 5 more minutes, Anna said. Then we really have to go. Enzo's expression changed. He'd been monitoring the security feed on his phone. The cameras Tommy had installed throughout the floor. What he saw made his blood run cold. Anna. His voice was urgent now. You need to go. Now. Take Nancy and run. What? Why? Vincent is coming. With guns. Men. He's going to kill me. Kill anyone. In the room. Enzo tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him yet. Go. Please. Get Nancy out of here. Anna grabbed Nancy's hand. Come on, baby. We have to. Gunfire erupted in the hallway. The sound was deafening, the sharp crack of automatic weapons, the screams of nurses, the chaos of violence invading a place of healing. Anna froze, her mind unable to process what was happening. Hospital lockdown alarms blared. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The PA system crackled. Active shooter. 6th floor. Lockdown in effect. All personnel take cover. Oh God, Anna whispered, pulling Nancy close. Oh God, oh God. The door to room 607 slammed open. 4 men entered, their faces covered with black masks, carrying weapons Anna had only seen in movies. Behind them, Vincent Russo walked in calmly, a pistol in his hand. Well, Enzo, Vincent said conversationally, as if they were discussing whether instead of murder. I did warn you. Anna threw herself over Nancy, her body becoming a shield. Nancy screamed into her mother's chest. Mr. Hop crushed between them. Enzo, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, ripped the 4 from his arm and tried to stand. He managed 2 steps before his legs buckled, but he positioned himself between Vincent's men and Anna and Nancy. Not them, Enzo gasped. Vincent. They have nothing to do with this. They're witnesses. Liabilities. Vincent raised his pistol. You should have stayed dead, cousin. Would have been easier for everyone. One of Vincent's men stepped forward, his weapon trained on Anna and Nancy. His finger moved toward the trigger. Nancy, terrified but brave in the way only children can be, stepped out from behind her mother. She clutched Mr. Hop like a shield and stood between the gunman and Enzo. Don't hurt the sleeping man. Her voice was high and scared but determined. He just woke up. He's still healing. You can't hurt people who are healing. That's against the rules. The room froze. The gunman stared at the 5-year-old girl standing in front of him, her stuffed rabbit raised like it could stop bullets, her face streaked with tears but her chin jutting out with defiance. Move the kid, Vincent ordered. Nobody moved. The gunman, a man named Tony who'd killed 7 people in his career, looked at Vincent, then at Nancy, then at his own reflection in the hospital window. He saw himself, a grown man pointing an automatic weapon at a kindergartner. Boss, I can't move the kid. I got kids, Vincent. I got a daughter her age. I can't. Then you're fired. Vincent raised his own pistol. The door exploded inward. Agent Morrison came through first, tactical vest and drawn weapon, FBI SWAT team behind him. The hallway erupted into chaos. Shouted commands, the metallic sound of weapons being dropped, Vincent's men surrendering to overwhelming force. But Vincent didn't surrender. He grabbed Nancy, yanking her against his chest, his pistol pressed to her head. Everyone back. I'll kill her. I swear to God I'll. Enzo lunged. He shouldn't have had the strength. His body was still healing, still weak, still struggling to remember how to function. But watching Vincent hold a gun to Nancy's head unlocked something primal in him. Something that had nothing to do with mob business or family loyalty or criminal empire. It was pure protective rage. Enzo crashed into Vincent with the full weight of his body. Both men went down hard, Vincent's gun skittering across the floor. They rolled, grappling, Enzo's stitches tearing open, blood soaking through his hospital gown. Morrison's team swarmed them, pulling Vincent away, forcing him face down on the floor, handcuffs snapping closed around his wrists. Vincent Russo, Morrison said, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 50 other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. Vincent spat blood on the floor. You got nothing that'll stick. I've got your phone records, your financial transactions, your thallium purchases. And now I've got you on camera trying to murder a federal witness and threatening a child. Morrison smiled coldly. You're done. Enzo collapsed against the wall, blood seeping through his gown, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Anna ran to him, Nancy in her arms. "Mr. Enzo." Nancy was crying, reaching for him. "You're bleeding. You're hurt." "I'm okay." Enzo managed, though his vision was blurring. "You're safe. That's what matters." "You saved us," Anna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You could barely stand and you saved us." Enzo looked at Nancy's terrified face, at Anna's protective grip on her daughter, at the two people who'd shown him what it meant to be human again. "You saved me first," he said. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Medical staff flooded the room as Morrison's team secured the scene. Nancy cried into her mother's shoulder while paramedics worked on Enzo, and Anna held her daughter tight, whispering promises she prayed she could keep. That they were safe now. That the bad man was gone. That everything would be okay. But Anna knew the truth. Nothing would ever be okay again. They'd witnessed attempted murder. They were federal witnesses now. And the world Enzo Caputo had pulled them into wasn't one that let people walk away. Even if they'd only been trying to show kindness to a dying man. Especially then. January 16th. 2 weeks after the siege. Enzo Caputo stood at the window of his new hospital room. A regular room now, not ICU, with a view of the East River where boats move through January gray like ghosts searching for shore. His stitches had healed. His strength had returned. The doctors said he could be discharged within days. The question was, discharged to where? Agent Morrison arrived at 2 p.m., carrying a folder thick with documents and possibilities. "Mr. Caputo," Morrison said, settling into the visitor's chair, "we need to talk about your future." "Don't have much of one," Enzo said. His voice was fully recovered now, no hesitation, no struggle. Just the quiet rasp of a man who'd learned to speak again and wasn't sure he liked what he had to say. "That's where you're wrong." Morrison opened the folder. "Vincent's arrest opened doors. He's trying to cut a deal, which means we have leverage on everyone in your organization. The Russos, the Gambinos, the whole network. But we need your testimony to make it stick." I figured. Here's what we're offering. Full witness protection. New identity, new location, financial support to start over. You testify, you walk away, you live the rest of your life as someone else. Morrison slid a document across the table. John Matthews, insurance adjuster from Toledo. Boring. Anonymous. Safe. Enzo stared at the paper. John Matthews. A man with no history, no blood on his hands, no empire built on fear. A clean slate. You could disappear, Morrison continued. Leave the violence behind. Start over. Live a normal life. Maybe even find peace. Peace, Enzo repeated like the word was foreign. You think men like me get peace? I think men like you deserve a chance to try. Morrison leaned forward. Vincent tried to kill you. Your organization is compromised. Your family is turning on each other. You go back to that world, you're dead within a month. This is your exit. Take it. Enzo looked out the window at the river, at the city that had been his kingdom for 30 years. He thought about the violence he'd ordered, the lives he'd destroyed, the empire he'd built on suffering. He thought about becoming John Matthews, boring and anonymous, pretending the past didn't exist. He thought about running, and he realized he couldn't. At 3 p.m., Nancy arrived for her daily visit, bursting through the door with the energy only 5-year-olds possess. She carried a rolled-up piece of paper, clutched tight in her small fist. "Mr. Enzo, I made you something special." Anna followed more slowly, her face showing the exhaustion of 2 weeks spent as a federal witness, answering questions, reliving trauma, trying to explain to her daughter why they couldn't go home yet. Nancy climbed onto the chair beside Enzo's bed and carefully unrolled her drawing. "See, that's you and that's me and that's Mommy. And we're holding hands because we're a family now." Enzo stared at the crayon figures. 3 people connected, smiling under a bright sun. In Nancy's world, it was that simple. You saved someone, they saved you back, and suddenly you were family. "We're a family because you protected us," Nancy explained, pointing to each figure. "That's what families do. They protect each other. You protected us from the bad man, so now you're part of our family forever." Something cracked in Enzo's chest. Not pain, something deeper. Something that felt like the last wall around his heart finally crumbling to dust. "Nancy," he said quietly, "I've done bad things. Really bad things. I hurt people. 4 years. I'm not a good man." Nancy considered this with the seriousness of a child who'd seen more than she should. "Mommy says people aren't good or bad. They're just people who make choices. And you chose to save us. That was a good choice. But all the choices before, those are in the yesterday. You can't change yesterday. But you can change tomorrow." Nancy patted his hand. "You're not a bad man anymore, Mr. Enzo. You're just broken. But broken things can heal. I know because you did." Enzo looked at Anna, who was crying silently by the door. He looked at Nancy's drawing. 3 people holding hands, a family born from impossible circumstances. He looked at the witness protection documents Morrison had left on the table. And he understood. Redemption wasn't running from what you'd done. It wasn't becoming John Matthews and pretending Enzo Caputo never existed. It wasn't escaping consequences or starting over with a clean slate. Redemption was facing exactly what you'd done and spending the rest of your life trying to balance the scales. Enzo called Morrison at 5 p.m. "I'll testify," he said without preamble. "I'll give you everything. Names, accounts, operations, murders. Every crime I committed or ordered for 30 years. I'll hand you the entire organization on a silver platter." "Good. We'll start witness prep tomorrow and then. But I'm not running. I'm not taking witness protection. I'm turning myself in." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Caputo," Morrison said carefully, "if you testify without witness protection, you'll go to prison. Federal prison. 20 years minimum, probably more. You understand that. I deserve it. This isn't how this works. You cooperate, you get immunity. I don't want immunity. I want accountability. Enzo's voice was steady. I built an empire on fear. I took lives. I destroyed families. I corrupted everything I touched. A new identity in Toledo doesn't erase that. It just lets me pretend it never happened. You're throwing your life away. No. I'm finally taking responsibility for it. Enzo paused. But first, I need to make something right. Enzo and Anna. Enzo called Anna to his room at 7 p.m. after Nancy had gone home with a child services escort. Anna came alone, her shoulders tight with tension. "Sit," Enzo said gently. "Please." Anna sat, her hands folded in her lap, looking like she expected bad news. She'd been expecting bad news her whole life. "Your daughter saved my life," Enzo began. "Literally, she brought me back from brain death. But also in every other way that matters. She reminded me what it means to be human, what it means to have compassion, what it means to choose kindness when the world has taught you to choose violence." "Mr. Caputo." "Enzo. Please. Just Enzo." He pulled out a folder, different from Morrison's, this one containing documents Anna couldn't read upside down. "I'm going to prison. 20 years, maybe more. I deserve every day of it. But before I go, I need to do one good thing. Maybe the only good thing I've ever done." He slid the documents across to her. "This is a trust fund for Nancy's medical care. $2 million. Clean money from legitimate businesses I own. It'll cover her treatments, her medications, her specialists, everything she needs for familial dysautonomia." Anna's hands shook as she picked up the first document. "I can't. This is a college fund. $1 million. So Nancy never has to worry about student loans or choosing between education and survival." "Enzo, this is too much." "And this," he said, sliding over the final document, "is a house deed. 3-bedroom colonial in Westchester. Good schools. Safe neighborhood. Paid in full. In your name." Anna stared at the papers like they might disappear if she breathed wrong. $750,000. "Enzo, I can't accept this. I can't. Please." Enzo's voice cracked. Tears, real tears, the first he'd cried in 30 years, spilled down his face. "Please let me do this. Let me do one good thing before I spend the next 20 years paying for all the bad ones. Nancy gave me back my humanity. Let me give her a future. This is millions of dollars. It's nothing compared to what your daughter gave me. She saw a monster and chose kindness. She saw a dying criminal and chose compassion. She saved my life and asked for nothing in return." Enzo wiped his eyes roughly. "I can't undo my past. I can't bring back the people I hurt. But I can make sure that one child, one good, pure, innocent child, gets to live the life she deserves." Anna was crying now too, clutching the documents. "Why? Why do this for us?" "Because Nancy's right. People aren't good or bad. They're people who make choices. I made terrible choices for 47 years. Now I want to make one good one." Enzo's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, let me be worth the life she saved." Anna looked at the trust fund that would save her daughter's life. The college fund that would secure Nancy's future. The house deed that meant they'd never be homeless again. She thought about refusing. About pride and independence and not being bought. But then she thought about Nancy, about her irregular heartbeat and breathing difficulties and the specialist appointments Anna had been canceling because she couldn't afford them. Sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was survival. "Okay," Anna whispered. "Okay. Thank you. Thank you." Agent Morrison explained the witness protection plan to Anna 3 days later. New identities. New city. Somewhere in the Midwest, far from New York and mob reach. New jobs, new schools, new lives. You'll be Anna Johnson. Nancy will be Nancy Johnson. We'll give you complete backgrounds, documentation, everything you need to disappear. When? Anna asked. After Enzo's testimony. After the trials. Probably 6 months. 6 months until they vanished from Enzo's life forever. 6 months until the man her daughter had saved became a memory. On Enzo's last day at Mount Sinai before transfer to federal holding, Nancy came to say goodbye. She brought one final drawing, this one of a man standing in sunshine, smiling, free. "That's you in the future," Nancy said. "When you get out of the bad choice place." "Prison," Anna corrected gently. "The bad choice place," Nancy insisted. "Because you're going there to fix your bad choices. And when you're done fixing them, you'll be free. Like in my picture." Enzo knelt down to Nancy's level, ignoring the pain in his still healing body. "I want you to know something. You saved my life. You taught me how to be human again. I'll never forget that. I won't forget you either, Mr. Enzo." Nancy threw her arms around his neck. "You're my friend. Friends don't forget each other." "No," Enzo said, his voice breaking. "They don't." He hugged her tight. This small child who'd shown a monster mercy, who'd slept on a dying man's chest and brought him back to life, who'd reminded him that redemption was possible even for people like him. Then he let her go. Anna took Nancy's hand. "We should go." Enzo watched them walk away. The woman who'd refused his money until it meant saving her daughter, and the child who'd seen his humanity when no one else could. He would never see them again. But because of them, he would spend the next 20 years becoming someone worth the life they'd saved. Sometimes salvation came from unexpected places. Sometimes monsters learned to be human. Sometimes broken things really did heal. And sometimes all it took was one night, one small heart beating against yours, to remember what you'd forgotten, that you were worth saving too. March 12th. Federal Courthouse, Manhattan. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Journalists, federal agents, former associates, and spectators who'd come to witness the fall of Enzo Caputo. The man who'd ruled Brooklyn's underworld for 3 decades now sat at the defendant's table in an inexpensive suit. His hands folded, his expression calm. For 6 months, Enzo had testified. His words had dismantled an empire brick by brick, name by name, crime by crime. 47 arrests followed his testimony. Capos, soldiers, corrupt police officers, politicians on the take. The entire criminal network that had strangled Brooklyn for generations collapsed under the weight of one man's conscience. His testimony prevented a gang war that would have killed dozens. It freed neighborhoods from the grip of organized crime. It gave prosecutors the evidence they needed to shut down trafficking operations, money laundering schemes, and protection rackets that had operated with impunity for years. But none of that changed what Enzo himself had done. Judge Margaret Vivian, no relation to Dr. Sarah Vivian, reviewed the charges with the practiced gravity of someone who'd sentenced hundreds of criminals. Enzo Caputo, you have pleaded guilty to racketeering, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and numerous other federal crimes spanning 3 decades. The sentencing guidelines suggest 25 years to life. The gallery held its breath. However, the judge continued, your cooperation with federal authorities has been extraordinary. Your testimony has resulted in the dismantling of organized crime operations responsible for countless deaths. The prosecution has recommended 15 years. She looked directly at Enzo. Before I pass sentence, do you wish to address the court? Enzo stood slowly. For a long moment, he simply looked around the courtroom, at the faces of people whose lives he'd destroyed, at the agents who'd pursued him for years, at the empty seats where his family should have been but weren't. Then he spoke. Your Honor, I built an empire on fear. For 30 years I took lives, destroyed families, corrupted everything I touched. I convinced myself that power was the only thing that mattered, that compassion was weakness, that the world was divided into predators and prey. His voice was steady, clear. I was wrong about all of it. He paused, gathering strength. 6 months ago, I was brain dead in a hospital. The doctors said I was gone, and I should have been. I deserved to die for what I'd done. But a 5-year-old girl, a child who'd never met me, who knew nothing about my crimes, showed me kindness. She saw something in me I couldn't see in myself, the possibility of being human again. Tears streamed down Enzo's face, but he didn't wipe them away. I can't undo my past. I can't bring back the people I killed or restore what I destroyed. But I can spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her faith. I can spend every day becoming the man she believed I could be, instead of the monster I chose to become. He looked directly at Judge Vivian. I accept full responsibility for my crimes. I deserve every year of the sentence you're about to give me. And I promise you, I promise everyone I've hurt, that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to balance the scales. The courtroom was silent. Enzo Caputo, Judge Vivian said, her voice softer than before, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. May you use that time wisely. The gavel fell. As guards moved to escort Enzo from the courtroom, he caught sight of 2 figures in the back row. Anna, wearing a simple blue dress, her hand clasping her daughter's. Nancy, now nearly 6 years old, clutching Mr. Hop and watching with wide, solemn eyes. They'd come. Despite everything, Despite the danger, despite witness protection protocols, despite having every reason to stay away, they'd come to witness his sentencing. Nancy broke free from her mother's grip and ran down the aisle. Guards moved to intercept her, but Judge Vivian raised her hand. Let her through. Nancy reached Enzo and threw her arms around his legs. You're going to be okay, Mr. Enzo. I know it. You're going to fix your bad choices, and then you're going to come back and you're going to help people. I just know it. Enzo knelt down, handcuffs clinking, and looked into the face of the child who'd saved him in every possible way. You woke up more than my body, little one, he whispered, his voice breaking. You woke up my soul. Nancy kissed his cheek. Then she pressed something into his handcuffed hands, a drawing of a man standing in sunshine, smiling, free. The same drawing she'd given him weeks ago. For when you forget, she said. So you remember who you're becoming. Guards led Enzo away. He looked back once and saw Anna holding Nancy, both of them crying, both of them staying until he disappeared from view. It was the last time he would see them for 8 years. 8 years later. Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville, New York. March 12th. Enzo Caputo walked through the prison gates at 8:47 a.m., carrying a small duffel bag containing everything he owned. 3 changes of clothes, toiletries, a college degree in social work, certificates from anger management and restorative justice programs, and a worn crayon drawing of a man standing in sunshine. He'd spent 8 years in federal prison. He'd mentored over 200 at-risk youth through a program that brought kids from gang-heavy neighborhoods to talk with inmates. He'd earned his degree through correspondence courses. He'd attended every therapy session, every rehabilitation program, every opportunity to become someone different than the man who'd entered. He'd served his time not with resentment but with purpose. Now, at 55 years old, Enzo stepped into morning light and freedom, prepared to start a life he'd never imagined possible. 2 figures waited by the parking lot. Enzo stopped walking, his heart suddenly hammering. It couldn't be. They were in witness protection. They'd disappeared years ago. They were safe, anonymous, living new lives far from New York. But there they were. Anna Johnson, formerly Moore, now 42 years old, wearing scrubs from her job as a registered nurse. Her face older but softer, the exhaustion of poverty replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who'd survived and thrived. And Nancy, 13 years old now, tall and bright-eyed, her hair in braids, wearing a jacket from Brooklyn Tech High School. Still clutching Mr. Hop, threadbare now but loved. Enzo walked toward them slowly, like they might disappear if he moved too fast. Why? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. You owe me nothing. Witness protection means you never look back. Why are you here? Nancy stepped forward, no longer the 5-year-old who'd climbed onto his hospital bed but still possessing the same fierce kindness. You taught me that people aren't their worst moment, Mr. Enzo. They're what they choose to become after. I wanted to see who you became. You gave us a life, Anna added quietly. Nancy's healthy because of you. She's thriving because of you. We wanted to see you start yours. Enzo's carefully maintained composure shattered. He wept openly, the way he'd learned to in prison therapy, the way he'd taught the kids he mentored that it was okay to do. Anna and Nancy wrapped him in a hug, the three of them standing together in the prison parking lot like the family Nancy had drawn 8 years ago. "Thank you," Enzo whispered, "for not giving up on me, for believing I could change." "You did the hard part," Nancy said. "We just reminded you it was possible." The new beginning. Enzo moved into a small studio apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Not Bay Ridge where he'd ruled. Not Carroll Gardens where he'd built his empire. But a quiet neighborhood where no one knew his name, where he could walk to work without bodyguards or fear. He joined a restorative justice program, working with gang intervention services. He spoke at schools about the cost of violence. He mentored kids who reminded him of himself at 15. Angry, scared, convinced that power was the only path to respect. He told them his story. All of it. The empire he'd built and the lives he'd destroyed and the years he'd spent in prison learning that true strength came from choosing compassion over cruelty. Some kids listened. Some didn't. But Enzo showed up every day anyway. He lived modestly, worked honestly, donated most of his modest salary to victims' funds and community programs. He attended therapy weekly, went to support groups, did the work of staying accountable. And every year on December 22nd, the anniversary of the night Nancy had slept on his chest and brought him back to life, Enzo visited Mount Sinai's Children's ICU. He read to kids who were scared and alone. He told them stories about bravery and healing. He reminded them that even in darkness, there was light. That even when everything seemed impossible, miracles could happen. He never mentioned his past. He was just Mr. Caputo, the volunteer who came every year with books and kindness. But the nurses knew. They'd looked up his name. They knew who he'd been. And they also saw who he'd become. Christmas Eve, 8 years after his release, Enzo stood at the window of his small apartment, watching snow fall on Brooklyn. The city glittered with Christmas lights, beautiful and indifferent, the same city where he'd once ruled with fear. A card had arrived that morning, forwarded through the restorative justice program. Inside was a letter from Nancy, now 21 years old, and a photograph of a young woman in a white coat standing outside Columbia University's medical school. "Dear Mr. Enzo, I got in. Full scholarship. I'm going to be a doctor. Thank you for showing me that broken people can heal. Thank you for teaching me that redemption is real, that people can change, that one act of kindness can save a life in more ways than one. I want to spend my life helping others wake up too, just like you helped me understand what it means to see humanity in everyone, even people the world has given up on. You're proof that miracles happen. Not just the miracle of waking up from a coma, but the miracle of waking up to who you really are. Merry Christmas, Mr. Enzo. You were right. Broken things really do heal. Love, Nancy." Enzo pressed the letter to his chest and looked out at the snow-covered city. For the first time in his 55 years, for the first time since childhood, since before the violence started, since before he'd convinced himself that monsters were born instead of made, Enzo Caputo felt peace. Not the absence of guilt. He would carry that forever, and he should. but peace in knowing that the rest of his life would be spent earning the second chance a 5-year-old girl had given him. Peace in knowing that redemption wasn't a destination but a daily choice. Peace in knowing that Nancy was right. Broken things really could heal. The miracle wasn't that Enzo woke up from the coma. The miracle was who he became after. Sometimes salvation comes not from power or money or violence, but from a child's innocent faith that even monsters can become human again. And sometimes all it takes is one night, one small heart beating against yours, to remember what you'd forgotten, that you're worth saving too. That redemption is possible. That change is real. That love, even from the most unexpected places, can wake the dead and transform the broken into something beautiful. Nancy Moore saved Enzo Caputo's life on December 22nd, not with medicine or miracles, but with the simple, radical act of showing kindness to someone everyone else had given up on. And in return, Enzo spent the rest of his life proving that her faith wasn't misplaced, that monsters can learn to be human, that broken things can heal, that even in the darkest night, there's always a chance for dawn. Thanks for watching till the very end. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be dropping another unforgettable story tomorrow, so make sure you don't miss it.